it's not just what you do in the world, but who are you in the world is important to know as well. It does start with us, but we start external and come in. So I've been thinking about that now and thinking, okay, so what can I do that makes me feel connected to something really wide, international, outside of where I am, in this place where the world feels very broken, very scary, very hard to have trust. And that's been the word I've been using, is where can I have some trust that I can connect and gain something from it, even if it's solace or companionship or togetherness.
All who dwell in the shelter, the refuge of God Most High, you will rest in the shadow of God the Almighty One.
Welcome to the Psalms for the Spirit podcast, and to this series of conversations I'm calling Something Psalmic. I'm your host, Karen Young-Wimberly, an ordained minister and spiritual director, an American living on the north coast of Ireland. 15 years ago, I started working on a project called Celtic Psalms, and since then have arranged and recorded 44 psalms set to traditional Irish and Scottish melodies, along with my dear friends, the McGraths. And throughout the years, I've heard over and over again how the psalms lift our spirits, how they help us find healing and hope when we really need it. I've also noticed that the themes and elements of the Psalms ripple out into so many aspects of our lives, and I've become curious about what in our lives is like a psalm, what brings us healing and hope in the midst of our days. So in this series, I've invited my guests to share with me something psalmic, something of or like a psalm that's helping them through right now. I hope this series inspires you to find something psalmic in your life too. And whatever it is that brought you here, I'm so glad you're with us.
10,000 beside, but they will not come near you. The Lord is your refuge and might. Surely God will protect.
I am so glad that you were willing to join me on this podcast, this new series that I'm doing, which is about listening for what is lifting our spirits these days and what is offering us healing or hope in that psalmic kind of way that kind of opens it up beyond just the words of the Psalms and the music of the Psalms, which, as you know, are really important to me, and I sing them a lot. But I like just taking it outside of that and sort of looking at the other parts of our lives that kind of have that same effect on us. And so I'm really, really happy that you're willing to have this conversation with me, because you are one of the more fascinating people that I have met in the last few years. We met when you came to a retreat at Corrymeela, and it was a silent retreat. And I remember we sat at the table together, and I just thought, I really want to be able to talk to this person, but I'm not allowed to speak. We're not allowed to talk.
No, and that was such an important, that was my first time in Northern Ireland. That was my first time at Corrymeela. It was my first silent retreat. It was such a difficult time in my life, and it was a threshold of leaving one life behind, moving forward and not knowing where to go. And so it felt like two banks, and being on the retreat was like being in the river, just throwing myself in, feeling like this is really unknown, and just, trying to look for some sort of trust or steadiness that I will come out and get onto the other side of the bank by the end of it. And I did, and it, then began the journey remaining with you and coming back.
And thankfully, we have been able to see much more of you than I ever would have dreamed. I just had no idea that you were going to be, so much a part of our lives. And I'm just so... I just look back at that moment when I actually remember when I first saw you were looking at a book in the library, and I was like, who is this? I want to chat with her. And then, I think we had a few minutes of being able to chat before silence descended. And then, so it's just been wonderful to have lots of opportunities since then to get to know you. And
Oh,
yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself. So what I'd love for you to do is just to, however you
yeah.
like to share about yourself, whether it's professional or personal, just give us a flavor of who you are.
Yes. Okay, all right. So I am a clinical psychologist. I work in the NHS. I've done that for a really long time. I live in Nottingham in England, so in the Midlands. I feel incredibly passionate about what I do, about mental health, and it's obviously a very difficult time because post-COVID, there services are really strained because of burnout for staff. So, the people who work in these services are part of the communities that experience the losses around COVID and the change of society. And then on top of that, we have these really long waiting lists and waiting times for people where their health is becoming more and more vulnerable and broken, but there's no speed we can offer them in terms of when we will see them. But I remain really passionate about that, and I feel I'm in the right place. But I spent most of my life growing up in Nottingham, and then I moved away and I worked in different parts of the UK, and I've been back in Nottingham just a couple of years. And when I came back, I made a promise to myself that I would be part of the community and do something that connected people together outside of the clinic room. And so one of the things that I do here is that I brought the 10 by 9 storytelling event from Belfast all the way to Nottingham, and we're a huge success.
Oh, I forgot about that.
It's so
that's
wonderful.
fantastic.
And that's just opened my world to just so many diverse people who have a story to tell, some aspect of themselves that, perhaps would never have been brought to the surface, definitely not shared with a group of strangers. But there's something about you select a theme, you put out a request, and it resonates with people and they take a risk. And supporting them in doing that is something I absolutely love. And
yeah,
we were just saying a little bit earlier about mountains. So yes, something I've discovered this year, is it this year, last year? Last year is that I am a natural mountain goat, and
it's just in your blood. You can just traipse up the hills.
I do, yes. So I am a mountaineer. I keep struggling to say that. I feel like no, I can't be, but I am.
You are,
and I absolutely am. And yeah, so that's something. I was born on a mountain in Kashmir at home, and it just feels like, yes, this is what I was meant to do. And so absolutely, that's something I can talk about for a very long time, just being a tiny woman going up mountains. When people look at me and they think, don't want her on our team, she's just too small. And yet I can, outdo them all because I've got the goat stamina. So I'm all good.
I know. I remember on the walking kind of, what do we call it? A prayer walk or a sort of meditative walk that we took on the beach in that first silent retreat. And I'm usually the fast walker of the group, but you were speeding ahead. And I was like, wow, this she's got some walking legs on her. And that was even before your mountaineering days. So
exactly. Yeah. There were these signs. There were signs. It's just taken a long time to listen.
Oh, I'm so glad you have discovered that. And I hope we hear some more about that later. But yeah, so now you can describe yourself as a mountaineer. That's quite a title to be able to give yourself. And I'm glad that you are embracing it.
I am. I'm trying to get my qualifications, my mountaineering qualifications, but yeah, I think that's just so that I can say that with certainty, but I'm ticking them off slowly. So yeah.
Amazing. Wow. Okay. Well, that definitely helps to give a flavor of who you are. So as we go to the next question, I was wondering what these days is lifting your spirit and, giving you hope right now.
That I've really, That's not an easy question. That's really not.
I
It's
know.
such a, I feel like there's such a tension between, partly because I also do some voluntary work for a charity called the Hands Up Project, where they run classes. They join up schools in Gaza or the Camp Hun UNIS at the moment with facilitators all over the world to run sessions for the children and really and for the teachers. So it's a way of showing them that we see them, we're connected to them, we're listening and we're supporting them. And it's also an opportunity for them to practice English. So since I've been volunteering with them, we haven't managed to do any of these sessions because of the situation. And so, when I think about that and I'm closely connected to it, and all the teachers, facilitators have a weekly catch up, you feel that, well, maybe it's okay to feel hopeless and to be feeling low and exhausted in the sense of where will change come from, that seeking of change. And I think the tension is that if we allow ourselves to sink into that, then not that we become passive, but there's an inertia that means we become very silent. And, I feel this sense of my body sinks and my voice stops and there's silence and there's less doing and there's less thinking. And even prayer becomes silent and doesn't move me. So I think I have to keep that in check. And so the seeking of hope alongside that, even though I know the reality of the world as it is means we can't turn away from that. We can't disagree or whitewash away what exists and the pain that exists around us. So for me, one of the ways I've been thinking about how do I keep hope as an action that can lift me and support me and help me is on 3 levels. So I got this from Ramadan. So in Ramadan, which is 30 days of fasting from sunrise to sunset, I would divide Ramadan into 3 lots of 10 days, 3 blocks. And the first starts with doing something outside of yourself and your immediate circle. So, you can go international, you can go world, universe, whatever it is, but not for you, not for your immediate family, colleagues, loved ones. So you keep your eye on something further away where you wouldn't naturally connect, and you spend 10 days, even if it's prayer or keeping a situation unconnected to you in mind. And then the third is about your family, your community, and you can make that as small as or as big as you want, your immediate family you live with, or the street you live, or the work, or whatever it is. But you bring that circle in, but outside of yourself. And then the final stage is we come to ourselves, and that's when we think about myself. What do I wish and hope for myself? Because it's not a selfish thing to to have prayer or thoughts about yourself. It's very much encouraged as part of self-development, that it's not just what you do in the world, but who are you in the world is important to know as well. It does start with us, but we start external and come in. So I've been thinking about that now and thinking, okay, so what can I do that makes me feel connected to something really wide, international, outside of where I am, in this place where the world feels very broken, very scary, very hard to have trust. And that's been the word I've been using, is where can I have some trust that I can connect and gain something from it, even if it's solace or companionship or togetherness. So I've been trying to look for places where that can happen. And so some for me has been a very simple thing of doing more international reading. So often the books I read are those provided in my local bookshop or that I come across that are very much a Western lens, a Western gaze. And so I've pushed myself, and I've actually chosen Kashmiri, and so I've looked for Kashmiri writers, which apart from my dad I'm not very familiar with, and Kashmiri music, Kashmiri films, and just trying to find. And it's been amazing. It's been a really wonderful experience of feeling there's the place I come from, and there are these artists and creative people. And back then in the 70s, they were doing this amazing thing, and they were speaking up and writing about oppression. And I found a lot from that. And then I've tried to connect with groups and people more locally to me. And then finally, the way I've done it with myself is a really odd way, but is to focus on my dreams, which it sounds
your literal dreams,
yes.
like your dreams at night, or your
yes.
dreams for the future.
No,
dreams at night.
Yes,
wow.
Just because I think maybe they tell us something that I myself am not consciously aware of, and as a way of coming to approach myself that is beyond my conscious awareness, because that will only get me so far in terms of I think I like this, or I'm thinking that, or needing this, and it's just another way of noticing something about myself. And so I've been writing them down, and sometimes they make absolute no sense, and sometimes I think I can put lots of interpretations on them, but
Yeah. Well, you probably have the right training to kind of view into your dreams a little bit more than maybe most people.
Well, I think it's interesting about dreams because I think it's about symbolism, and I grew up as a Muslim learning a lot about all of the Abrahamic prophets having dreams. I mean, lots and lots of dreams. I mean, they just dreamt and dreamt and dreamt, and there's all these signs that are given to them, and they don't necessarily follow them. And I think, interpretations that we put on dreams are often led by what we consciously want and how we want to understand them. And I think some of the trust and the hope is that there is a message in there, but I don't think I have to fight or work so hard to understand it, that maybe it will reveal itself in time. And to hold that, just write it down and look at it, note the feeling that comes with it, and then let it sit rather than overly complicate it. Because I think truth, whether religious for the prophets or for me of how to have hope in the world, it's a complex undertaking, and I don't want to simplify it by arriving somewhere too quickly. I think you have to just pose questions and not necessarily try to run with an answer or a narrative too soon.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's so wise, just to kind of capture it somehow. And then I know that when I was doing my my spiritual direction training, we looked at dreams a little bit. And one of the things I found was so helpful was to look at the emotions, as you said, the emotions that come out. And then even if the scenarios in which the emotion came out were like fictional and kind of, absurd or whatever, you would sit with the emotions and you'd say, well, where else in my life am I feeling that way? Yeah. And that was when it would lead to some sort of a truth that was really helpful, because then you'd realize, I'm having anxiety. And it's about something completely different than what my dream was about, but the feeling is there. And even just noticing it in that therapeutic kind of way, just the noticing of it is helpful. And it sort of puts it outside of yourself, and it allows you to deal with it a little bit better than if you were just holding it. It's like that feeling just needs to get out somehow, and it doesn't know how, and it creates this whole story in the midst of sleep.
Exactly. And I think, I just remember that I had a repetitive dream for 10 years or so that was very anxiety driven, and I could never really fathom its meaning and where to place it. I knew the feeling was anxiety. It created anxiety, and I would discuss it with lots of learned people, whether that be my therapist, my supervisor, my colleagues, friends, whoever it would be. And we would have lots of interpretations, and we'd put ideas and thoughts on it. But the dream never stopped, and it kept happening. And finally, the dream came to pass. The dream was real, and it occurred. The situation occurred. And And once that happened, obviously the dream didn't happen anymore, but it really made me realize, yeah, some things are not supposed to be answered. They're just supposed to be noticed and watched and waited on. And yeah, that pursuing it like that endlessly isn't always the most helpful part. But clinically, for my patients, they can't bear the anxiety of that, the uncertainty of something. And I think having a religious view can help. That in Islam, it's very much about answers. My role, God's role, or the Quran's role is to provoke your thinking and your interest, not to answer your questions. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that framework in general of how you have been approaching. And I think it's wonderful that it came out of Ramadan and your practice of
Yes.
Ramadan. Is that a typical practice, or is that something you just came up with yourself as a way
No.
to use those 30 days?
Yeah, no, I don't think it is. And so I think this often happens in lots of cultures where there is religion, that I think, religion can be very self-serving, and it can be very good at looking after its own tribe and those people who belong, really protecting them and offering them something, and it simplifies things. And I just felt that there has to be more to this, that it's not 30 days of self-reflection of, we're not meant to go into a cave. The prophet did that. We don't need to be following that. There's something else that we're being asked of that. And it took some time to do that. And I tried various things, like taking a verse from the Quran each day, a different one, pondering it, sitting with it. But it was too narcissistic, isn't the right word, but very self-absorbed, and it would detach me. And I didn't think the purpose is, my name means the one who fasts. And I was very, I don't think it means just to fast. I was very convinced of that. I don't think it's just about discipline. And I think that's one level. And that's what helped me to think it means to be self-contained, to hold, to be steadfast, to have resilience. And what is the point of being steadfast and resilient? It's in order to anchor others and to be able to support others. And so then that led to, oh, right. So then maybe a part of this is renew that, but then come out of yourself too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such an important piece. And I'm looking at that a lot these days with spiritual practices in general, which, is such a broad term, but that it's not just for ourselves. It is for ourselves partly, but it's really so that we can be in relationship with others in the world, that we can serve, we can make a difference, we can be a part of, creating the world that we want to see, that that hopefully, that we could be a part of bringing goodness into the world and hope and
absolutely
all that, that everybody needs. But, so we do need to have those practices, but that's not the purpose of them. Isn't just to, for us to feel good or
it's not the full stop. It's not the end point. And I think social connections, I think they're the most important part of human nature going forward. I think it underlies everything, from climate to wars to pandemics. It's all about social connections. And I read a really interesting research paper recently that devised, so it looked at what's the average number of connections each human being has, and they came up with 150 from looking at things like Facebook data, so millions of users, and what's the average number of people have, and various other things. And I think there's something about that when we feel unsteady in the world, when we can't trust our politicians or what the next move will be, how the earth will respond to us, what the next virus will be, actually maybe that leads us to withdrawing and hiding and going into that cave and becoming very self-serving. But if we connected and we supported one another, then strength can come from that. So even really small things, I'm the annoying person who on a train and plane will always not put earphones in and, want to talk to someone and say, or in the queue for something, or I do or giving someone a compliment, something to connect. It's really important to me to say something to a stranger, to form a connection, that we're in it together, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, those relationships, even if they're with strangers or with people that you know better, they're so crucial. Hi, listeners. It's Kieran here. Thank you so much for listening to Psalms for the Spirit. And I hope you're enjoying this series about what lifts our spirits and offers us healing and hope at this challenging time. This summer, I am inviting you to join me for something special. It's called Summer for the Spirit, a season to cultivate well-being in body, mind, and spirit through daily practices and through community. In a world where hard news keeps coming and we are feeling overwhelmed and anxious and depleted, we need practices that ground us, refresh us, give us courage to engage with hope and love and joy. If you're craving moments of peace and inspiration, and if you need sustenance for the journey, Summer for the Spirit just might be for you. Head over to kieranyoungwimberly.com/summer to find out more and download your free guide to 7 spiritual practices for well-being in uncertain times. Let's nurture our spirits this summer so that we can make a difference together.
My God, I'll give thanks evermore.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, it's like a nugget of something to take away, that framework of how to approach, I guess, well, you were saying seeking hopefulness when what you're seeing around you isn't necessarily hopeful. And I mean, you're in touch with lots of different people. You're very aware of what's going on in the world. And you're mentioning that particular it was a volunteering experience or something where it puts you in touch with people who are really struggling. And you don't want to ignore that, but also you don't want to lose hope completely. And so these are some things that you have been able to use to hold on to and seek some sort of hope.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. And that's great because, I think that's something that we can really take away ourselves. So you start with sort of, it's like a larger circle that is looking at the broader world and listening for what do you do? So you just kind of learn about and listen about what's going on in the rest of the world first.
Well, the idea, that can become overwhelming, because a lot of people would choose to do that via the news or how do I do that? But I think for me, it's your world. So what is familiar to you and how would you connect to something that's unfamiliar on a larger scale? And it's not just to absorb the news, but to be part of it in some way. And so how do I engage with something and discover something that I wouldn't ordinarily do? And I don't think that needs to be profound or something that's socially very conscientious, or I think it can be the arts, or it can be, I want to know about, I'm going to start watching foreign films, or I'll do that. But it's something that stretches your mind to a corner, that illuminates something you wouldn't normally look towards, because that's an enrichment. That's
Actually, I really like that spin on being aware of the world, because I think these days you almost feel like to know about the world is to hear about all the awful things that are going on everywhere. But that's obviously not all there is out there. And to maybe become curious about other people and other ways of thinking and other experiences. And like you're saying, novels and art and film and music maybe. But to kind of like train your mind to think outside of your little circle, whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. Open it up to something you wouldn't have ordinarily gravitated towards, just to see it's not you don't have to do it for the rest of your life, but it's just an exercise towards, what does that do to me? Does that open something that I didn't even know was there? And what's amazing is you find a connection to it. You didn't think, but there's something. I think that's what's incredible when you even just speak to a stranger, that you think they're a complete random person, but there is some sort of thread that
Yeah.
links you. And that's
Yeah.
the same with a novel from Georgia or something, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Far away from Nottingham.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and then the next circle in is looking outside of yourself, but in your local community. So
Yes.
you might be
Yeah.
looking for
Yeah.
ways of engaging with people
Absolutely.
in your
Yeah.
locale.
Yeah. And that can be, I've done so many different things, which has been so wonderful. It's just, I mean, even this, you are part of my extended community in Northern
Yeah.
Ireland, but this isn't something I've done before, but this is one of those things. I'm
Yeah.
having an
Yeah.
exchange with you. And so,
Yeah.
that just, I think, embeds and emphasizes the two-way process. I think
Mm-hmm.
it, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
builds on the last exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, it builds on it and sort of it gets a little bit deeper. And then the inner circle, I guess, is yourself. And you were
Yourself.
talking about dreams. And what are some other
Yeah.
ways you'd recommend?
So obviously, because I think that, this final part is then that we hope that if we've started by opening windows out towards people and things that we wouldn't ordinarily look at, even if it's art, whatever it is, whatever we've done to look externally and to have something new, is to then come and look at ourselves and think, did that illumination highlight a blind spot for me somewhere? So that's the key part for me, is not just, I mean, I do meditation and breath work, but this isn't the same. It's not to just be in my body and to settle. The idea is to, oh, what was my blind spot and what can I lift from that? And so for me, dreams is one way of doing that, that what's coming up that I consciously am not looking at. But another way I find really helpful is being in nature. And I think being with people in nature. So again, not really on my own. I think that becomes a different journey, but sharing a walk like we did at the retreat with you. And even though that was in silence, you're with other people and you see their footsteps, you see people walking alongside you. It's a complete different experience, but what does that highlight for you? What do you notice that perhaps before was veiled for you? And I use this clinically, this approach as well. People come to therapy wanting to understand their own minds, and I tell them, well, we're about to go on a bit of a long journey to get there, but you stay with me. I promise we will come to it. And they don't quite understand, why is she taking me all around the houses? Well, I just want to know this about myself. But
You mean literally on a walk or?
yes, I do take them on
Right.
walk, but I set them
Okay.
goals such as, I want you to go to the library and choose a book you wouldn't ordinarily choose. And they sort of say, oh, I'm not doing that. I've got a pile of books I want to read. No, I want you to. And they don't. But it's amazing, because then when they come to themselves, they've got used to the idea of opening up parts of themselves
Yeah.
to what I guess would have been a disagreement or a difference or an othering
Yeah.
or a separation. They've brought something in, and now they can relate to their own mind and feelings slightly differently. And so I think nature is really good. I think connecting with people is really good. I think writing is really good. I think dreams are very good for this. And I think asking yourself that question, is there a blind spot that has shifted or moved? Is there something, an emotion, something I'm noticing that I hadn't before? Where am I?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's really helpful to have that as your kind of goal in some ways, is to think, how can I shift that blind spot? How can I remove the blinders in some way and be able to see a bit maybe wider, a bit more clearer, but just get a different view, I guess.
Yes.
And it reminds me that part of the reason I always loved being a student was because of, like, I would always be exposed to different ways of thinking, and my mind would be stretched, and I'd read books that I wouldn't choose myself, and I would, and then I would be able to follow kind of my curiosity a lot more than I do when I'm not a student anymore. But it reminds me that that's something we can do at any point in time. We can always
absolutely.
pique
But
our
it's
curiosity.
interesting that we we long for that freedom and independence and agency to not be told what we need to read and do and assignments we need to complete, that we can't wait to be the master of our own learning. But the danger is it becomes very self-serving. I will only read what I'm comfortable to read. And when it doesn't sit right, I will turn it away. But when it doesn't sit right, it may open something in you that you hadn't known needed to be opened or wanted to be or seeking to. And not for the benefit of someone else, it's for the benefit of yourself.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think in some ways the three circles that you talk about, it is sort of the same attitude with each of those, is to look outside of yourself and to remove those
Yes.
blinders and to be curious
Yeah.
about the world, the
Yes.
community around you, and about yourself.
Yes.
And that somehow kind of unlocks this
Yeah.
experience of hopefulness that we can find
Yes.
in our midst.
Yeah, I think so, because that there is a thread, whether it's the umbilical cord or it's the solar plexus or it's back to where we were created and where we return, but there is a thread. And I think that what we're seeking is not something linear. It doesn't need to be linear. I think vulnerabilities and failures and blind spots and the cracks and the difficulties and the losses are all part of that same thread. We're never off that journey, I don't think, even if we don't feel we're being held or we're guided. I think we're still on that thread. And that for me is really comforting. I find it, I'm still held and I'm on the right path, even when I'm failing. I'm meant to be here.
It's all a journey, isn't it? So one of the things you said about examining yourself is that you can do that when you're in nature. And
Yes.
it reminds me of your walking and your mountaineering. So how does that link with that pastime you've developed?
Yeah, it is quite complex, and it's not completely well thought out, but I guess some of my thoughts about it are that, so I come from a mountainous part of the world. I come from Kashmir, which is the highest conflict on earth, and the mountains, the Himalayan range, are literally divided into two. And on one side we have India and we have Pakistan, and in the middle we have Kashmir, which is further divided into the Pakistan-administered Kashmir and the Indian-administered Kashmir. So when I'm on that mountain, when I was there, I think for me, there's a reminder and a connection to there's a family line that has existed on here. There's something, I come from this great line of people who live on a mountain, so my feet can do this. So it's really, it instills some security in me that each foot can go in front of the other and I can make my way, because my grandmother and grandmother and grandmother did this, so I can do this. It's in my blood. But I think the other part of it is that there's a word in Arabic called gainat, and I don't really know, I've never known the exact translation, but it's all creation, which would be from mountains to clouds to insects to humans to hair to everything. It covers absolutely everything that is created and put on the earth. And there's something about being on a mountain that for me emphasizes and really shows you a sizable, literal, in front of you example of there are things that are far greater and timeless than what is in my mind and my heart and I'm stuck with. So there are these awesome things in front of me. What is in my heart is tiny compared to that. My worry, my feelings, my thoughts, perhaps I can lay them here as I walk and something will come from that. And that's not a Muslim version of being on a mountain. All the way back to Nan Shepherd in Scotland has a similar idea of journeying and what you will discover. I think there's a recognition between the divine and creation and the humility of being human. And yeah, we're in some amazing powerful force that roots my feet and is bone and blood. But there's also something that I am a tiny, tiny speck of what is God. So it definitely, for me, it very much reveals. And one of my favorite childhood stories, Abrahamic stories, is of the prophet hiding in Medina in a cave and hiding from his enemies who are chasing him up this mountain. And I was only a little girl, and I think all of my siblings claim it as their favorite story, but I do feel a deep attachment to it, and I seek it wherever I go. And in order to maintain his hidden presence in the cave, a spider forms a web, weaves a web outside the cave. So when the enemies are coming up and these soldiers, and they see that, oh, well, he can't be in that cave because there's an undisturbed web. And so, that's something we've all heard growing up. Most Muslim children will, and we have a lot of respect for spiders and webs, and we feel drawn to them. But then when I was in the Himalayas, and I did different peaks for over a week, and the highest peak, and people in my group are having emotional revelations, epiphanies, breaking down, all kinds of things are happening over the week, and I'm thinking, I'm not having anything. And what's happening with me? Where's my blind spot, and when will this be unveiled? And we get to the final day, and I decide to pray on the summit. And I put my walking stick down, and by the time I've got up and I finish my prayer, there's a spider's web around my walking stick.
Around your walking stick.
So it created a web in such a short time of me praying, and it was beautiful. And I took a photograph of it, and that remains something its meaning I don't understand, but it is a sign. I'm sure it's a sign.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that just, that's lovely. What a lovely image. And how special that it connects with that story that was already important to you.
Yes.
Then, so you knew that meaning struck you immediately, even if you're unpacking what it might mean for you, but that's symbolism.
I guess, I believe it means something to do with protection, being contained and cared for, but fragility, the humility and the fragility. And the mountain, I learned that I am a mountaineer, and I can do this, and I can do this well. And mountains after that, and requests to come along on treks after that, came from my ability on that mountain. So I think there was something in that, but that took an entire lifetime to understand. Why does this story of this spider make sense to me? And it revealed itself in its own time.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much. This has been such a meaningful, enriching conversation for me. I'm sure for those listening as well. And it just makes me think we are so much richer for you being in our lives. So thank you so much. Thank you for talking with me today, and also just being a part of our lives. And I'm glad to be able to hear more of your wisdom and share it with others too.
Thank you so much for asking me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And is there any word or phrase you'd like to leave us with today?
So, I think the one connected to all of this, and the phrase from the Quran that I wrestle with, and I will always wrestle with despite the signs, is that there's a verse in the Quran that states there are signs for those who seek them, and people have different interpretations. There are signs on earth. It's just one interpretation, but the one I gravitate to is those who seek them. And even when a sign is given, such is our fragility and incompleteness, we continue to seek further. And so, I think I'll leave with that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Saima. It has been wonderful to connect with you.
And
it's made my day.
Me too. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
You too.
All who dwell in the shelter, the refuge of God Most High, you will rest in the shadow say that the Lord is my fortress, in whom I trust. Surely God will protect you from trouble all through. Surely God will protect you from trouble all through. From the snare of the fowler, from pestilence deadly and dark. Under wings of protection, your God will draw you close.
You've been listening to Psalms for the Spirit with me, Kieran Young Wimberly, with music by Celtic Psalms. If you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you would leave a 5-star review so that others can more easily find it. And if you know someone who might be inspired by this podcast, please do pass it on. And finally, make sure you sign up for my podcast email list so you never miss another episode. Until next time, may our spirits find healing and hope in the days ahead.